Hello, it's a long time since we've been talking together, isn't it? It's been a very weird time for Hugh and I at the moment. But I've been thinking about banks. There are lots and lots of different sorts of banks, aren't there? In America you can have a polar bank where you can put carcasses of meat, and when you fancy a joint you go and make a withdrawal from the bank. You have banks of mum and dad. Our bank of mum and dad has been raided quite a few times. Lots of different sorts of ways to use your money. Places of deposit. When my sister and I were very little, it was a weekly occurrence for mum and dad to take us into town. We didn't have a car, and we went in on the bus. We would visit the library. Then we would go to the bank and we would put in our pocket money into our own savings account, and then we would go back into town into Owen Owens, this is in Coventry, and we'd have a cup of coffee at Owen Owens, and there my father used to meet lots and lots of his friends. They would just come up and have a chat. He was very good at making friendships. That was his bank, the bank of friends that you had. We weren't allowed ever to buy anything unless we had the money to buy it. So when I wanted to buy a bike, my parents said to me, if you pay half, we will pay half. So I went to the bank and I withdrew the money, and I was able to have my very first bike. And it's something that has stayed with my sister and I all our lives. We save up to buy whatever we need. Well, you know, in the Bible it talks about banks. It says in several places in the Bible, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, first Ephesians, that the Holy Spirit is a deposit guaranteeing things to come. And you know, sometimes you need to draw on your savings, don't you? And the last few weeks is a time when I've had to do that. Hugh went into hospital for open heart surgery, and it was quite a tough time, and it was touch and go in a couple of places for him. And so I was quite worried, prayed the whole time, but I was relying particularly on the deposits of prayer I made weeks, months and years ago. I sit in this little chair, as you know, and I pray every day. I make my deposit into the bank of prayer. And when I felt absolutely exhausted in these last few weeks, because when you're in hospital you have no idea of the time of day, and so Hugh would text me in the middle of the night sometimes, and I would wake up and I would text him back and we'd have a little conversation. And so I was getting really rather exhausted trying to cope with the day and cope with the night. And so at times when I sat in this little chair, I just cried. And it was then that the bank gave me what I put in. God would come up with scriptures and wonderful things for me. I found out that the deposits of friendships I'd made with neighbours, with people at church, with people over the years, I could draw on their prayers too. People would knock on the door and say, "Are you all right?" People would text me and say, "How are you getting on? Can I bring you anything? Can I do anything?" Just like my dad, the years of depositing into friends, I was able to draw on. And God is just like that. When you deposit things into God's hands, you can draw on Him for strength, for help, for guidance, just to take you through those difficult times. Thankfully, we're coming out of those difficult times now, and Hugh is feeling a lot stronger, a lot better, and hopefully he'll be back driving and we'll be able to live a much more full life. He went to the pacemaker clinic the other day, this Wednesday, and they hooked him up to a machine and they tweaked his little pacemaker, and that was lovely. And if you just heard that little ping on my phone, that's another one of my friends saying, how are you doing? So how are you doing? Are you making your daily deposit into God's bank so that in times of need you can make that withdrawal? I hope so. See you soon. Bye-bye.